Hello, and welcome to this session on fibers and social emotional learning, or SEL, specifically on story pouches and story squares. I'm Dr. Trina Harlow, the founder of Online Art Teachers K-12 and co-director, and I am really excited to bring this session to you because I've been a fiber artist, truthfully, since I was 5 years old, and have delved in fibers my entire life, although somewhere along the way I developed a love of painting. And I'm eager to share today with you some of my research in fiber arts and a couple of projects that I think will be great to do in the fall of 2022 and into 2023 as we all come out of this pandemic, hopefully, and we can tell our stories, because storytelling is an important part of healing, according to research. Actually, evidence shows that if a child or adolescent tells their story to even one person that listens and cares, healing starts. So let's talk about how we can use fiber arts in our classrooms. Before we get started on the projects I want to share with you today, I want to just share a little bit of research with you. After September 11th in the United States, quilting guilds saw a resurgence. The 9/11 Museum in New York City has quilts done by people from all over the world who just wanted to do something to show their love and care to the U.S. You may have seen images of those quilts hanging all around the cathedral across from where the World Trade Tower stood. After World War II, men returned from war, children from evacuation, some families were reunited, and the comfort of home became sacred. Boy, I think we know that feeling because of the pandemic, right? Sewn domestic niceties such as embroidered tray cloths and tea cozies and chair covers were stitched with great care to brighten and cheer homes. In World War II concentration camps, women made quilts and signature cloths, not in joyful sewing bees, of course, but privately, and to reclaim their solitude and individual expression among the overcrowded, claustrophobic, and terrible atmosphere of a camp where their personality was a registered number. After World War I, doctors asked shell-shocked soldiers, say that fast 3 times, to embroider as a way of healing mental scars, as it provided a way to steady their hands and settle their minds. Ruth First, an anti-apartheid campaigner who endured a long imprisonment and solitary confinement, took up needlework to take control of her time. It was both an act of rebellion and self-preservation. An organization called Fine Cell works with hundreds of imprisoned men doing embroidery. Organizations like Seeds to Sow, so powerful, and Sowing the Seeds, and various trusts and other organizations empower global people in poverty through the use of needle, thread, fabric, and sewing machines. There have been many studies that explore the positive relationship between creativity and well-being, and also studies that show that there's a benefit from the mesmeric immersion in crafts as a relief for those suffering from anxiety. The action of sewing and the tales we tell in fiber art make it a medium of choice for many people, professionally, personally, and in educational settings. Fiber art truly is a mechanism to tapping into social emotional learning, and we all know that in these times, we art teachers are looking for those projects that really reach out to students, our students of all ages. Even if all the ideas in this presentation may not be new to you, my hope is that you will take away some thought-provoking PD and some good curricular ideas, supporting research, social emotional learning tools, or maybe a new way to incorporate certain skills in your classroom during what we hope is a post-pandemic time period for education and the world. I'm a lifelong fiber artist. I am obviously an art educator and researcher, and not from the medical or therapy field, yet my research for almost 10 years has been in the field of the visual arts, storytelling, biopsychosocial learning, trauma and anxiety, intercultural pedagogy, and social emotional learning. Today's presentation includes narrative from my research. As we get started today, I want to briefly discuss anxiety. I'm certain that there are those viewing this session that know all too well what anxiety is. I hope today offers you some new morsel of knowledge and that it does for everyone viewing this session. After I presented on this topic at the Arkansas Fall Conference in 2020, a couple of art teachers who are moms came up to talk to me afterwards and shared some things their teenage daughters were dealing with, and were thankful to hear some of the strategies we will go over today. At NAEA in New York in March, I was able to present this research to literally an overfull packed room of attendees, many who wanted to discuss this further after the session. So let's learn or be reminded of what anxiety is. Anxiety is your body's way of letting you know how it is reacting to what's happening in your world. If something is triggering your fight or flight response, you may be experiencing anxiety. If the world is feeling chaotic and stressful or out of control, you may feel anxiety. You may even experience symptoms of anxiety in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep and may not even know you're under stress. Anxiety is your body's way of cluing you into how you are responding to these things. Symptoms of anxiety aren't always obvious. Anxiety can look different for different people, and almost everyone has experienced anxiety in their lives. More extreme signs of anxiety in our students and even ourselves would be flailing of arms and maybe legs, or being able to stay seated. Our students or ourselves could feel frozen or stiff, eyes darting, and fists clenched. Some people experience fast, shallow breathing. They feel blood coursing through their veins or find their thoughts racing. Others may appear quite calm and cool on the outside, but inside they may hear their heart pumping fast. Anxiety can feel like a panic attack and even may be mistaken for a heart attack. It can creep up on us as insomnia, an increased heartbeat, higher levels of cortisol, inability to complete tasks, easily losing focus, and inability to concentrate, impulsive, or labored decision making. Whether it's obvious or subtle, anxiety can be problematic. There is no one way to experience anxiety. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, 18.1% of the United States population above the age of 18 are affected by anxiety each year. Almost 20% of the US population above the age of 18 are affected by anxiety each year, each school year. Only 36.9 of those get treatment. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, an estimated 31.9% of adolescents aged 13 to 18 have an anxiety disorder. 8.3% of these were severe disorders. According to the evidence, more adolescent females have anxiety than males. How does our body protect us from anxiety? Our bodies are brilliantly designed. They're designed to protect us from anxiety, although we know that doesn't always happen for a variety of reasons. When we experience anxiety, our autonomic nervous system goes into a sympathetic charge. This means that our primitive brain jumps into the fight or flight mode, knocking us out of our zone of resilience, which is that place where we can think, feel, care, and reflect. When we're in this fight or flight mode, our body thinks there is danger and releases all kinds of stress hormones to get us ready for battle. This undue stress wreaks havoc on our sense of wellness, causing wear and tear on our body and brain connection, depleting our energy, and affects our ability to bounce back. In this state, rational thought and problem solving are more difficult to access. In clinical terms, this means we are in the limbic emotional region of our brain. The limbic region is an area meant to keep us safe, alive, and functioning. This area controls memories and emotions. When overly activated, we feel less ourselves. And when regulated, we find rest, we're more resilient, and we find clarity easier. We need our whole brain and our entire autonomic nervous system to function. The average person experiences highs and lows throughout the day. We wake, we move, we get excited, we get tired, we get bored, we sleep. We ride these waves of the autonomic nervous system all day long. That's normal. We do this. Our students do this. When we get too excited, too nervous, too frightened, the sympathetic branch skyrockets and it's harder to think, feel, and sometimes breathe. I bet you're already picturing students in your mind who this reminds you of. Art is an evidence-based, proven mechanism to calm anxiety. This session is short and I don't have time to go into all of this today, but anyone who reaches out to me, I'll help you with this research. Scientific evidence shows that engaging in artistic activities calms the amygdala, which is this alarm center in our brain. It's part of the limbic system that processes positive stimuli. That part of our brain acts as a threat detector, and it seems to enjoy art making as it relaxes and is not alert during the creative process. What if we as teachers better understood that the key to improved well-being could lie in triggering certain nervous system responses in our students? What if we had more training on this in our pre-service education programs? What if we could better help our students and ourselves, even our families, if we better understood nervous system responses? First, let's get a better understanding of our sympathetic nervous system. When we're in the sympathetic nervous system, we experience rapid breathing, rapid heart rate, tense muscles, the sweat, high blood pressure, expanding blood vessels to get more flow and oxygen to our bodies, heightened senses, release of blood sugar and fats from the body stores for energy, and those increases in our cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone. We cannot stay in this sympathetic state all the time where we enter into what's known as chronic stress. Chronic stress, 2020, 2021. So we need to turn off or slow down this process when the threat is no longer a threat and the danger has passed, or the perceived threat or danger has passed. This moment of sympathetic frenzy is when we need the parasympathetic nervous system to come in. It tells our sympathetic nervous system to, whoa, slow down, take a break. It tells your body it's okay to slow down, to take deep breaths. It's okay to relax. Yes, your parasympathetic nervous system tells your overreacting sympathetic nervous system that very thing. The good news is there are some tools that we can use to ask our parasympathetic nervous system to come help. And one of these tools is the vagus nerve. Read more about that. There is much to know about the vagus nerve, but I'll be brief here and share some ways to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system to action, or I might call it the PNS, by triggering the vagus nerve. These strategies will help you, and they're going to help your students. Touch your lips. This works even if you're wearing masks. Tap and touch your lips. The lips have parasympathetic fibers running through them. Something as simply as gently running your fingers over your lips can stimulate the PNS. Next time you're feeling stressed or anxious, take one or two fingers and just gently rub them back and forth on your lips. Everyone, right now, reach up, touch your lips, rub your fingers back and forth. Focus on the sensations it creates and notice how the mind and body begin to relax and refocus. If you were on the planet Earth the last 2 months, you had to have known about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. And I saw a video that someone had put together that showed many clips of Johnny Depp over the years, maybe even during the trial, rubbing his lips. And someone that put this video together commented how often he did that. And as I saw that video, I thought, I wonder if he knows it's a calming mechanism for the vagus nerve, and that's why he's doing it. I hear he's very intelligent. Maybe that's why he's doing it. But right now, think of a student in your class. We all have these students. You have a student that you occasionally know just rub their lips all the time. I don't know if they know they're activating their vagus nerve or if it's a habit that calms them and it's psychological. There's a real reason it's calming them, but they may not even know it. Imagery is another way. The next tool uses calming imagery to stimulate the PNS and grounds us and relaxes us. Try this. Take a moment to imagine your favorite place. Visualize exactly what it looks like. Visualize how relaxed you look while you're there. I think I'll do it right now. Notice every detail, every color, every shape in this space. As your mind focuses on these details, rather than the current stress you're experiencing, you'll notice you naturally begin to calm down. I pictured a mountain stream in Meeker Park, Colorado. Breathing is an important tool. If you intentionally focus on slowing your breathing, even during moments of stress or fight or flight, it can trigger the PNS response. Practice taking slow, deep breaths from the diaphragm. Place a hand on your stomach, and you'll notice it rises and falls as you breathe. This tells you you're breathing from the diaphragm. The moment we anticipate stress, most of us stop breathing. We hold our breath. Breath holding activates the fight or flight response or the freeze response. So in those moments, inhale slowly through your nose and exhale more slowly through your mouth, and it will trigger a relaxation process. And repetitive movement. This brings us to the benefit of fiber arts. Movement, such as sewing, hand sewing, knitting, crocheting, is a great way to reduce the stress that gets stuck in our bodies and our brains and that of our students. Movement helps us get back to a relaxed state. Repetitive movement gives our bodies a chance to push the reset button, kick our natural healing and renewal process into gear, and can also bring us into a state of mindfulness, which is just a centering of your thoughts and body. Walking, yoga, gardening, swimming, dancing, and yes, sewing, knitting, crocheting, and so on provide opportunities for repetitive movement. Finally, there's quite a few other things we can do to stimulate our vagus nerve. Get out on the internet and read about it. But some of those things are loudly gargling water, loudly singing, foot massage, immersing our faces in cold water, eating fiber, and laughing. Yes, laughing. And if someone sees you in the faculty lounge loudly gargling water, just tell them you're activating your vagus nerve and see what they say. You know, one reason that the SNS, the sympathetic nervous system, and the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system, one reason that their relationship and with the vagus nerve is so important is that why it's so important for us to know about is what I'm about to tell you. You see, I was that kid. Well, it appeared to the outside to most people that I had a great family life. My family was very respected, involved in our small town, leaders in our town, leaders in our church. On the inside of my family home, bipolarism ruled two of my family members. They were dominated by it before anyone even knew what it was. It kept our family in a state of anxiousness all the time. I was a child who dealt with bipolarism in my family. I was that child who came to school and the teacher thought I had a perfect life and was well cared for, but she didn't know how hard things were inside my home on almost a daily basis. She didn't know that my sympathetic nervous system often stayed in a state of flight or fight. I didn't know it either. It was just my normal. I truly believe that my high levels of creativity came out of these life experiences that I speak of. I was that child who needed art. I wanted you to have a basic knowledge of our nervous system and the vagus nerve as evidence-based proof that there are many benefits to the art of creating and fiber arts. Okay, now let's get to the fun stuff. I am quickly going to show you some fiber arts projects that some of my students have done and that I've done. But before we get started, I want to take you on a little whirlwind around the globe because you see, I have been collecting fiber arts done by artists all across the world for 45 years, maybe. I went on my first trip overseas when I was 16, and I have been drawn to fiber arts in all of the traveling I've done. I think I've been to 27 countries so far and taught school in 3 countries. Some of those trips were for professional purposes, some were for personal travel. But one thing I know is that artists create beauty with their hands, and it comes from their heart. And I wanted to show you that because I think what we need going into the fall is we need some hearts and hands working together. So I'm just going to show you a few things here. Beautiful fiber arts. This is going to be quick. So we have saris from India, beautiful hand-sewn fibers. We have Turkish towels. Picked this up in Istanbul, Turkey when I was there on a Fun for Teachers fellowship. You often see me wearing these Puebla dresses from Mexico. I absolutely love the hand embroidery on them and the bright colors. Raleigh quilts from Pakistan. My friends Nina and Surinder Velasi make these quilts in Pakistan, and they're all made by hand. And we have, this is a dairy cloth done by my friend Gasali Adiamo from Nigeria. Let's see, what else have I got here? Here's some navy blue. This is a scarf, but this is some of Gasali's Adiri cloth done with cassava paste resist, which is much like batik. This is a batik that I picked up in Uganda when I was there teaching, made by an artist from Uganda. This is just tourist stuff. A tea towel, hand embroidered by a woman in Ecuador, where I taught school 3 times. And probably one of my most favorite pieces is this beautiful wool felted jacket from Mexico, circa 1940. It is in excellent condition. It's a good thing it's too small for me to wear because I would wear it all the time. So I have a great respect and revere for the fiber artists from all across the world. And oh yes, a couple more things. This is Kantha cloth from India, totally done by hand. And then we'll end with this quilt done by my grandmother. And it's one of my cherished possessions. So fiber arts, I think, is in my genetics. It's something I loved. One of my earliest memories was seeing my granny, Cole in Arkansas, sewing on her very old Singer sewing machine when I was a little girl, which was quite a long time ago. All right, let's move into some of the projects. How about that? I want to start off with a frog in my throat. These 4 projects were done as a series of projects telling the story of being afraid to speak in public. They were done by one of my university students who's going to be an art teacher. The little frog in her throat in the small story square, which you see on the far left, was the first project in a series of 4 that all told a building story. It represented nervousness she felt when speaking publicly and something she was concerned about since she wanted to be a teacher. She worked through this fear as her story evolved in these 4 projects, and by the last project, she owned her fear. This process was so therapeutic for her that it surprised even me. I'm not going to talk about the other projects because today we're focusing on Story Squares, which is the one you see on the far left. Then let's take a look. This student told a story of transitioning from being a biologically born female to becoming a male. The challenges the student faced are symbolized in the art making. I want you to notice the student saved and hung his testosterone bottles like fringe from the wall hanging. And I don't have a picture of this student's story square right here. I think we'll see one a little bit later. But the story square was being made during the time of the 2020 election, and it was all about voting. And as a transgendered student, he was concerned about the vote. All right, so I've shown you just a couple of great collections by students, so you can see how students can pull a story into their fiber arts. Now let's take a look at story pouches. We're going to go back to story squares in a minute. So story pouches, it's a simple project that I make with students. In a way, it functions a little bit like a sampler because you can literally teach them 8 to 10, 12 embroidery stitches using Ada cloth. That's counted cross-stitch cloth. It's easy for them to see. You can give them each little sections, maybe 6 inches by 4 inches, and you can teach them. You're going to have to probably teach them how to thread a needle because that's really hard for them, and a lot of them have never learned how to do that. And teach them simple stitches. There's a lot of great videos out on the internet. I'm going to share a link to you in the resources with a lot of fiber arts resources for you. So I would suggest that you use this story pouch project also as a sampler. After you do the Ada cloth, do the story pouch before you go on to a bigger fiber arts project, or do the story pouch with younger aged students, lower classmen, and then do a more advanced project with your older students at whatever grade level school you're at. I have a lesson plan for you in the session materials. And this is a simple project. You can easily combine scraps of fabric, ribbons, threads, beads, and other embellishments as kits. You can clean out your cabinets for these story squares. You can just make baskets of stuff, put it on the table. And after you've taught them the stitches, you're going to teach them how to cut these out, or perhaps you put kits together, which is what I did for my students. I put a kit together, and then they didn't have to go dig through things unless they just wanted to find some things to personalize it, but they had everything they needed in their little kits, which were in Ziploc baggies. This project is fairly easy, and again, you'll spend a lot of time threading needles if you do this for your first project. I advise buying some needle threaders. Here are some examples of story pouches that my students did. And yes, the story pouches open up, and then you can have them write a story or a poem and put inside of here. It would be great for a curricular integration with language arts, reading, writing. All right, now let's go back to the story squares more officially. In the next 3 slides, I'm going to show you the story square project that I do with my college students. In essence, they're autobiographies, autoethnographies, self-portraits, all in fiber. Students are asked to create a representational or non-representational self-portrait focused on a story they want to tell using fiber, and to then write about the story they told. So we have a great curricular integration here with language arts. You can see mine on the top row. The cursor's not going to move in this Zoom recording, but the top row, you see one with little turquoise, top row on the left, you see one with little turquoise pom-pom balls. That was mine. On the front, I depicted the me I wanted to show the world during the pandemic, my public self, public face, and I wrote about it in a Sharpie on there. And then on the back side, I shared my private self, and on the back, my photo has a mask on. To the right of my story square, you see the one that my transgender student did, that where she's screaming, "Vote." These are some more of the story squares that my students did. Great stories. I wish I had time to go over all the stories with you, but the one on the left was about, she used the theme of the ocean and coral reefs as a metaphor for change she felt on her because of various reasons in life. And she got pretty detailed about that in her artist statement. The middle student was from the Bahamas, going to school in Arkansas. You see a lot of her Bahamian influence in it, and she loves color. And she told a wonderful story with hers. And then up here in the top, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to move that at this point. It'll slow me down, I think. But this student has dealt with anxiety her entire life in a very serious way. And my fibers class was so calming for her. And she told a story of being a butterfly. And so her first project, here we have the caterpillar. And throughout the 4 projects, we saw her grow into a beautiful butterfly. This was my story square, and I put it on here large because I wanted you to see that it's pretty homespun. I used digital photo transfer on fabric sheets that you run through your inkjet printer and then iron on. It's all fabric. And then I embroidered lots of different stitches on it, and I wrote my story on the front and back. In the projects that I just showed you, my students and I incorporated our identity through our autoethnographies and fiber. I've been thinking a good bit about identity because of the pandemic. Are we going to be the same teachers we were before the pandemic when we really truly get to teach in a non-pandemic world? Are we going to be the same people? Are students going to be the same? What is normal anyway? Normal is different for everyone. What was my normal before the pandemic? What was yours? What will my normal be now? What will yours be? With the reports we're hearing all over the country about behavior in schools and teachers leaving the profession, much more may be different. I'm not sure. We can each ponder this question in our own way. We've all been through a lot. So of our students, I'm beginning to think that I'm not going to be the same person in my future that I was prior to the pandemic. And I think that might be a good thing. I'm kind of holding my breath and trying to wait out what that means. I better quit holding my breath though, right? I don't want to overstimulate my sympathetic nervous system. I believe that our art projects are specifically designed to tell story, to express our identity, and to express our thoughts and emotions. I really believe this is a way forward for us all. And the added benefit is these projects are calming. Hand stitching is calming, unless you stick yourself with a needle. Let's end with this quote by Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. "Take your needle, my child, and work at your pattern. It will come out a rose by and by. Life is like that. One stitch at a time, taken patiently, and the pattern will come out all right, like the embroidery." Thank you so much for joining this session.